Welcome back to the deep dive. So, looking at the sources you've pulled together today, wow, it paints a picture of a world really under intense pressure right now.
Yeah, intense is the word. The theme isn't just isolated crises. It feels more systemic. We're seeing these escalating conflicts, big policy changes that sort of throw out the old rule book, and then just brutal humanitarian fallout all at once.
Right, all happening simultaneously.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to try and synthesize these things, cut through the noise. We've got everything from, these incredibly tense hostage negotiations in Gaza to a complete U-turn on climate policy, and then boom, a Category 5 hurricane slams into the Caribbean.
It's a lot.
It is. We need to focus on what connects these things, what it means for the big picture, especially the human cost, and maybe where political systems are failing.
Okay, let's dive in. Starting with those conflict zones. You mentioned the Middle East first, the situation between Israel and Hamas, specifically around this exchange process.
Yeah, and this is incredibly fragile. The key thing this week, the really critical news, is that Israel confirmed the remains of 3 people Hamas handed over. Well, they weren't any of the hostages.
Oh, wow. So a major setback in that process.
A huge setback. And it really highlights the failure of trust. This whole exchange mechanism seems built on shaky ground. It comes right after Israel returned the bodies of 30 Palestinians to Gaza.
So there's this back and forth, but it's fraught with suspicion. I read Hamas's armed wing said they offered samples first.
They did. They apparently offered samples of unidentified bodies for Israel to examine, but Israel refused. They wanted the remains themselves to stop the claims of Israel, as Hamas put it.
And Israel demanding the physical remains, not just samples. That obviously ramps up the tension, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It suggests the verification process itself is maybe broken. I mean, identification is incredibly sensitive politically, culturally. So when one side rejects a verification step, it just deepens the mistrust.
And the actual progress since this ceasefire started, what, October 10th? It sounds painstakingly slow.
Agonizingly slow. We've only seen the remains of 17 deceased hostages released. There are still 11 more due under the current deal. It's just glacial.
And on the Palestinian side, the numbers there also point to a lack of clarity, right?
They really do. Israel has returned a total of 225 bodies since the ceasefire began. But get this, Gaza's health ministry says only 75 of those have actually been identified by families.
75 out of 225.
Yeah. Think about that. A huge number of unidentified remains. It just adds this whole other layer of tragedy and complexity. And we saw just how fragile this whole thing is earlier this week.
Right, when an Israeli soldier was killed in Rafah.
Exactly. The whole deal nearly collapsed. Israel launched strikes, killed over 100 people in Gaza. It just shows you this entire mechanism is constantly teetering on the edge of breaking down completely.
So that's the fragility of a specific agreement. Let's shift now to West Africa, Mali. This sounds less like a fragile agreement and more like, well, the potential collapse of an entire state.
That's unfortunately accurate. We're talking about Mali, and it seems to be deteriorating very, very quickly. The main driver is JNM. That's Jama at-Nusrat ul-Islam al-Muslimin, the al-Qaeda affiliate there.
And they're not just attacking randomly. They seem to have a specific goal, converging on the capital.
Precisely. They're strategically moving towards Bamako. And the warnings are becoming, frankly, quite dire. Observers are seriously talking about Mali potentially becoming an Islamist republic, under strict Sharia law, kind of mirroring what happened in Afghanistan with the Taliban.
And their main tactic right now seems incredibly focused, this fuel scarcity. It's been going on for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it's a strategically cruel but effective move. They're blockading the main supply routes from Ivory Coast, Mauritania, Senegal.
So cutting off the economic lifeline.
Exactly. They kidnap or kill truck drivers, soldiers guarding the convoys. The whole logistics chain just freezes. And the pressure this puts on the military government in Bamako, it's immense. Maybe more effective than battlefield wins, in a way.
And the impact on ordinary people in the capital must be immediate.
Devastating. You've got widespread power cuts because, no fuel for generators. Shops are closing, food prices are spiking because transport is paralyzed. Schools were shut until November 9th. Daily life is just grinding to a halt. The government's losing control.
To the point where other countries are now sounding the alarm.
Big time. The U.S., Australia, Germany, Italy, they've all told their citizens basically, get out now. It's urgent. And, some observers are warning this chaos could easily trigger another coup. Mali's had 5 successful ones since 1960. This could be number 6.
There's also this weird political angle involving Mahmoud Dicko, the cleric. He was involved in ousting the last president.
Yeah, it's complicated. Dicko was a key figure in the M5 RFP protests that helped bring down President Keita. Now, there are claims, unverified, but claims that Keita told regional leaders Dicko actually wants an Islamic State.
And JNIM is playing into this.
Apparently, reports suggest JNM is now demanding that Dicko, who's currently in exile, be allowed to return so they can negotiate with him instead of the current government.
Wow. So they're using military pressure to try and pick their negotiating partner?
Seems like it. It's shaping the political table through force.
This conflict, it's been going on since 2012, right? Over 17,700 deaths, and most of those since 2020. Why the sudden urgency from foreign governments now? Is it just too far gone?
Well, it's partly the sheer difficulty of intervening against this kind of entrenched, expanding jihadist group, especially with Mali's political instability, the coups. But also, JNIM isn't staying put. They're expanding operations into coastal West Africa now, Benin, Nigeria.
So it's becoming a regional threat.
Exactly. A potentially catastrophic regional security problem. So these warnings feel less like intervention prep and more like bracing for the fallout to spread.
A truly grim picture. Okay, shifting gears from state collapse to, well, a different kind of potential breakdown. Global cooperation, specifically on climate change.
Yeah, it's a sharp pivot, but it fits the theme of major policy shifts. The big news here is the White House confirming the U.S. won't be sending any high-level representatives to the COP30 climate talks in Brazil this month.
COP30 and Bill M. That's the big one. What's the reason given for skipping it?
It's explicitly linked to the administration's plan to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement by year-end. The focus, they say, is on expanding fossil fuels.
So doubling down on fossil fuels instead of participating in global climate talks.
Pretty much. A White House official even mentioned the president calling climate change the greatest con job at the UN. The argument is that they're prioritizing energy security through historic trade deals and peace deals, not multilateral climate stuff.
And we've seen actions backing this up, haven't we? The Paris Withdrawal Plan, executive orders boosting oil and gas production.
Declaring a national energy emergency to speed up drilling permits, yeah. And even pushing back against global efforts to cap plastic production. It's a consistent pattern.
But how does this policy square with the actual measurable human cost? You mentioned the Lancet Countdown report.
Exactly. That's the stark contrast here. The Lancet data shows the health impacts aren't some distant future problem. They're happening now.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Shocking numbers. Between 2012 and 2021, they estimate 546,000 people died annually just from heat exposure. And even more immediate, think about the wildfires. Toxic fumes killed a record 154,000 people globally just in 2024.
250,000 deaths from heat. 154,000 from wildfire smoke.
Yeah. These are preventable deaths. It really challenges that idea that prioritizing short-term energy production doesn't have massive, immediate public health consequences.
So while the U.S. steps back, what was actually on the table at these Brazil talks? What were the stakes?
COP30 was supposed to be crucial for keeping that 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit alive. Plus, Brazil was pushing its big proposal, a $125 billion fund, the Tropical Forest Forever facility. That kind of initiative really needs buy-in from major players like the U.S.
So the U.S. absence leaves a pretty big hole, financially and politically.
A massive hole. It removes a key anchor for the whole agenda.
And just briefly, connecting this back to those historic deals, the White House mentioned we should touch on the U.S.-China trade situation.
Right. There was that headline confirming a trade truce agreed last week between President Trump and Xi Jinping. We don't have many details from the source, but its significance is huge.
How so?
Well, it sort of acts as a political lubricant, doesn't it? It allows the administration to claim success in stabilizing that key economic relationship, even while they're, you could argue, actively destabilizing global environmental policy. It shows these big shifts happening simultaneously in different arenas.
Okay, let's pivot one last time. From policy and geopolitics to an immediate raw crisis. Hurricane Melissa in the Caribbean. This just brings us back to the sheer force of nature.
Absolutely. Melissa hit Jamaica as a Category 5. That puts it up there with the most powerful storms ever recorded in the Caribbean. The devastation is just immense.
The reports coming out are just awful. Dozens dead across the region, right? Haiti hit hard, Cuba too.
At least 30 confirmed dead in Haiti alone, yeah. And Cuba had severe landslides. In Jamaica, the information minister used phrases like entire communities marooned, areas flattened. It gives you a sense of the scale.
And the immediate aftermath sounds like chaos. Widespread power outages.
Total breakdown of basics. As of Saturday morning, 72% of Jamaica still without electricity. Think about that. And around 6,000 people crammed into emergency shelters.
And without power, people can't even get fuel for generators or cars.
Exactly. Long queues for fuel, hours of waiting, often finding the stations are dry anyway. People are desperate. We're even hearing reports of people, going into damaged supermarkets just to gather and distribute food themselves because official aid is struggling to get through.
Why is the aid struggling so much?
The infrastructure is just wrecked. Landslides, down power lines, trees blocking roads. It makes getting supplies incredibly difficult, even dangerous. The UK has pledged £7.5 million, which is significant, but getting it to the people who need it now is the real challenge.
But there are some efforts getting through on the ground.
Yes, thankfully, like that 7-truck convoy from the Global Empowerment Mission Aid packed by the Jamaican diaspora in Florida, getting from Kingston to Black River. It shows how crucial that kind of private, community-driven effort is when state systems are overwhelmed.
And then there's the evacuation of foreign nationals.
Right. The UK's chartering flights to get its citizens out estimates are around 8,000 Brits were on the island. It's kind of a grim indicator, isn't it, when the focus shifts to extraction because the local infrastructure can't cope.
So pulling all these threads together, we've seen the fragility of deals in the Middle East, the potential systemic collapse in Mali, a huge U.S. pivot away from global climate cooperation, and then this overwhelming natural disaster in the Caribbean. What's the takeaway?
I think the sources paint a picture of a world hitting multiple simultaneous points of failure. You see how political choices focusing on short-term energy or maybe ignoring the factors driving conflict in Mali have real deadly consequences. But then sometimes even those massive political forces are just dwarfed by the raw power of nature, like a Cat 5 hurricane. The fragility is everywhere, political and physical.
Which leads us to our final thought for you, the listener. We've heard about the immediate health costs from the Lancet study, hundreds of thousands dying from heat and smoke now. And we see the staggering cost of rebuilding after a storm like Melissa, one of the most powerful ever. So here's the question. At what point do the unavoidable escalating costs of these natural disasters costs, measured in lives and billions of dollars, force policymakers globally to fundamentally rethink their priorities? Even those dead set on maximizing short-term energy gains right now, could a Category 5 storm paradoxically create the kind of political or economic pressure needed for real change, forcing unexpected alliances when the cost of rebuilding simply outweighs any profit from ignoring the underlying problem? Something to think about.